First contact and confusion. The hegemony's seventh fleet hung in the void like a constellation of engineered stars, their crystal-clad hulls scattering the light of distant suns. Admiral Vex Saren stood tall on the command deck of the flagship. Eternal dominance, arms folded behind her as she regarded the tactical readout with rising frustration. "Verify the scans," she commanded, her inner eyelids fluttering, an old sign of agitation her staff recognized too well. "Confirmed, Admiral," replied the sensor officer. 5 unidentified ships on approach, heading 227 Mark 43. Drive signatures do not match any registered species in our database. Vex's annoyance deepened. The galactic hegemony had controlled these regions for over 10,000 cycles. No new interstellar species should have emerged undetected, let alone made it this far into hegemony-controlled space. Their presence alone was an affront to established order. "Open a channel," she ordered. "Let's remind these savages whose stars they've wandered into." The communications officer obeyed, and the main screen blinked to life. Vex Saren had expected trembling aliens, or perhaps dignified fear in the face of her fleet's might. Instead, she saw a human woman in a captain's uniform, feet on the console, nonchalantly eating what looked like a sandwich. "Oh, hey!" the human said cheerfully mid-bite. "Sorry, shift change. You caught us at lunch. I'm Captain Sarah Chen, Earth Expeditionary Force." Gorgeous ships, by the way. That crystal design? Stunning. Mind if we grab a few pics? Vex's facial tendrils twitched. This was not how first contact was meant to proceed. "You address the 7th Fleet of the Galactic Hegemony," she intoned, her voice sharp with trained authority. "Your vessels have violated sovereign territory. You will be inspected and escorted to the nearest station for species classification." Chen perked up, intrigued. "Species evaluation. Sounds fun. We love making new friends. Also, we're here by invitation. Ardani gave us travel clearance 6 months back." "The Ardani are a subordinate state," Vex snapped. "They lack authority to issue such permissions." "Funny," Chen replied, brushing crumbs off her uniform. "Their new leadership says otherwise. You may want to refresh your diplomatic links. Things are changing fast on the rim." Vex felt the narrative slipping from her grasp. The Ardani had long been considered utterly subdued. The idea of an independent government was absurd, yet the human's confident tone was disturbing. "Your ignorance of hegemony law is no defense," Vex barked. "You will comply." "Sorry to cut you off," Chen said, grinning. "But our science guy is freaking out over your crystal tech. Mind if we send some drones to scan up close? We're trying to beef up our material sciences division. Your fleet is just breathtaking." On Vex's bridge, confusion rippled through the crew. No species had ever responded to the 7th Fleet with scientific curiosity. Fear, yes. Awe, certainly. But this? Like they were some mobile museum. "Your insolence is intolerable," Vex growled. "We are the hegemony. We ruled the stars before your kind lit fire. Our science is beyond your reach." "Oh, for sure," Chen said, nodding enthusiastically. "That's why we're pumped. To study it. You know, any super advanced tech feels like magic until you break it down." She leaned forward, eyes alight. "By the way, we're reading some odd quantum surges in your primary drives. Did you crack cascade alignment in your crystal matrices? We're experimenting with something similar back on Earth." Vex went cold. The cascade alignment method was a jealously guarded secret in hegemony engineering. How could these upstarts possibly know of it? "You will cease scans immediately," she snapped. "This is your final warning. Submit for inspection or suffer the repercussions." Chen finally sat upright, sighing. "Look, I'm trying to play nice. But if you're going to be all official about it..." She tapped a few keys on her console, and a series of documents appeared on the main screen. "Here are our diplomatic clearances, navigation rights from 3 different sector authorities, and our research credentials. We're happy to comply with an inspection, but it'll need to follow Galactic Convention. We're listed as an independent research fleet. Article 7, Section 12 should lay out all the steps. Vex Saren stared at the documents, stunned. They appeared fully authentic, verified by the quantum seals of multiple known authorities. But that couldn't be right. No new race had ever maneuvered through hegemony protocols so thoroughly before initial contact. "Admiral," her intelligence chief murmured, "we're detecting strange energy readings from the human ships. We don't know what they're doing, but it doesn't match anything in our archives." "Scanner trouble?" Chen asked kindly. "Yeah. Our quantum shielding messes with traditional systems. We're still debugging it. Tell you what, how about we drop to minimal power and restart? Maybe trade some cultural insights while we're at it? I'd love to learn how your people developed crystalline engineering." Vex Saren felt her control slipping further. These primitives weren't intimidated. They acted like equals. No, worse, like experts trying to be patient with an amateur. It was intolerable. Yet something about their calm, assured tone made her hesitate. "You will remain where you are while we verify your documents," she ordered, struggling to sound in control. "Of course," Chen said cheerfully. "Take all the time you need. Oh, and since we'll be here for a bit, anyone interested in a knowledge swap? We've got some amazing quantum entanglement studies we'd be thrilled to share, and your crystal work could help refine a few of our models." When Vex Saren cut the comms, she sat in silence. For the first time in her distinguished career, she had no idea what came next. The humans didn't behave as expected. No fear, no deference. Worse, they showed insights into tech that should have been far beyond them. "Admiral," her second-in-command asked cautiously. "Your orders?" Vex looked at the 5 unassuming ships. They were so small beside her mighty fleet, yet they exuded an effortless certainty that deeply unsettled her. "Contact High Command," she said at last. "Tell them we might have a complication." 3 days into the diplomatic standoff, Admiral Vex Saren received the message that would fracture her view of the galaxy's balance of power. The humans had requested clearance to bring in a research vessel to assist with technical dialogue. She had expected a small companionship. Instead, what emerged from hyperspace silenced every voice on the bridge. "By the first light," her weapons officer whispered, all 4 hands trembling. The vessel that arrived made even eternal dominance seem modest. It was ancient, unthinkably old. Covered in signs of long-term repair and innovation, it bore the unmistakable design, those flowing forms and maddening geometries known throughout hegemony nightmares. It was a precursor warship, a remnant of the civilization that had vanished over 50,000 years ago, leaving behind ruins, cryptic technology, and dire warnings about what lay beyond the galaxy's edge. "Hope we didn't spook anyone," Captain Chen's voice chirped brightly over comms. "Everyone, meet the second chance. Bit rough around the edges, but we've really grown attached to her." Vex Saren could barely speak. That vessel is restricted. Precursor constructs are strictly off-limits. How dare you defile—" "Oh, she wasn't in a ruin," Chen interrupted. "We found her adrift in deep space. Poor thing had been floating for ages. Took 15 years just to figure out how to power her without, ripping a hole in space-time. Want to come aboard? Our restoration team loves giving tours." The nonchalance with which the humans discussed their possession of a precursor worship was perhaps even more shocking than the vessel itself. The hegemony had built their entire civilization around studying and reverse engineering fragments of precursor technology. The idea that these newcomers had not only found an intact ship but restored it to functioning condition was impossible. Vian declared your species couldn't possibly understand precursor systems our greatest minds have spent thousands of cycles merely trying to decode their basic principles. "Yeah, we noticed. You guys seem to treat their tech like it's some kind of mystical artifact," Chen replied. "That's actually a pretty common problem we've encountered. Everyone's so convinced. The precursors were these godlike beings that they're afraid to really dig into how their technology works. We just approached it like any other engineering challenge. Admiral, her science. Officer cut in urgently the human vessel. It appears to be repairing itself where date in molecular reconstruction. At the quantum level, Chin beamed good eye. The self-repair systems were one of the first things we got. Working turns out the precursors built everything with a sort of quantum redundancy. Every component contains the information needed to rebuild itself. Once we cracked that principle, everything else started falling into place. 6. Surin watched in horrified fascination as sections of the ancient hall shifted and flowed, damaged area snitting themselves back together like living tissue. This was beyond forbidden technology. This was something out of legend. Your claims are outrageous. She managed. Finally, if you truly understood precursor technology, you would be the most powerful force in the galaxy. Oh, we don't want to be the most powerful anything, Chen said with a dismissive wave. That's way too much responsibility. We just want to learn and explore. Speaking of which, our engineering team has been studying your crystal tech, and we think we figured out how to solve that cascade alignment problem you're having. Want to see our calculations? Before Vexen could respond, her tactical officer called out in alarm. Admiral, we're detecting multiple hyperspace signatures, more human vessels incoming. One by one they emerged from hyperspace. Dozen ships of various sizes, each one clearly incorporating precursor technology. To some degree, some were purely human in construction, but built using precursor principles. Others were restored precursor vessels like the second. Chance, all of them hummed with power that made Vexen's sensors scream and protest. Sorry for the crowd, Chen said. Word got out that we'd made first contact, and everyone wanted to come say hi. That's Dr. Patel's research group from the Quantum Archaeology Institute, and I think I see Professor Wong's Sanat Technology Team Ho, and that's the new horizons they've been exploring out past the rim. Hey, Sarah, how was the trip? Vizerin watched in mounting disbelief as the humans chatted casually among themselves, sharing sensor data and comparing notes on their various projects they treated, universe-shattering technological discoveries like everyday shop talk, discussing principles that the Hemon's best science, Tist S, had barely begun to grasp. I don't understand, she said finally. If you have this level of technology, why announce yourselves with such a small fleet? Why not simply demonstrate your power from the beginning? Chen looked genuinely puzzled. Why would we do that? We're here to learn and make friends, not show off. Besides, starting with the big ships tends to make people nervous. We figured a smaller expedition would be less intimidating. She paused, then added apologetically, though I guess that didn't work out quite like we planned. Sorry about all. This we really didn't mean to overwhelm anyone, as Vexarin struggled to process this response. Her intelligence officer approached with a trembling report. Admiral, we've been analyzing their communications there. They're sharing everything technical. Data research notes, theories about precursor technology. They just giving it away to anyone who asks. Of course we are. Chen said, overhearing, that's how science works. Everyone shares their findings. Everyone benefits. She brightened. Hey, would your science teams like to join our next research conference? We're hosting it on the second chance next month. There's going to be a fascinating presentation on quantum archaeology techniques. The Yin stared at the human captain, finally understanding what she was. Dealing with these weren't conquerors or warriors. They were something far more dangerous. They were explorers and teachers, utterly unburdened by the fears and preconceptions that had held back other species for millennia. And they were about to turn. Everything the hegemony knew about the galaxy upside down hidden powers awakened the Hemony. Central Command's response arrived exactly as Captain Chen had predicted. 3 battle fleets, Shino Ed watching the massive armada emerge from hyperspace. They're taking this better than I expected. Last time we did this, the Chronix Empire sent 5 Admiral Vuran had spent the past week in a state of perpetual astonishment as she watched the humans casually rewrite everything she thought she knew. About precursor technology now, as her superiors arrived with enough firepower to reduce a solar system to atoms, she found herself more concerned for the hegemony than for the humans. A High Council demands your immediate surrender and the transfer. Of all precursor vessels to hegemony control, the newly arrived Grand Admiral declared, his image dominating the communication screen. "Yeah, that's not going to work for us," Chen replied, still reviewing sensor data on her tablet. "The ships are sentient. You see, can't really transfer them anywhere. They don't want to go." The Grand Admiral's facial tentacle writhed in rage sentient. "You dare mock us with such absurd claims." "Oh right, sorry, we probably should have mentioned that earlier." Chen looked up genuinely apologetic. "Hey, second chance wanna say." Hello, the massive precursor vessel shimmered its quantum field, suddenly alive with patterns of light that formed themselves into a holographic face, larger than most ships. The expression it wore was distinctly, "Amused greetings, Hemi leadership." The ship's consciousness set its voice resonating through space itself. "I apologize for not introducing myself sooner. My human friends thought it might be overwhelming during initial contact, the Grand Admiral's image flickered as he physically staggered backward. This is impossible. The precursors never created true." Chen corrected the precursors. "Disk discovered that consciousness itself is a quantum phenomenon their ships weren't built with. Artificial intelligence, they were grown with actual intelligence. We just had to figure out how to wake them up." Vicerin watched as the Grand Admiral's face cycled through expressions of shock, fear, and outrage. "If what you say is true, this technology must be controlled." The danger off, sorry to interrupt, a new voice cut in, and another holographic face appeared, this one projecting from a smaller vessel. "But I think there's been a misunderstanding about the relationship here. I'm Dr. Lakshmi PTL. Of the Quantum Pioneer, and we're not controlling anything. We're partners with these vessels learning from each other." The hegemony fleet sensors suddenly screamed warnings as the precursor vessels began to power up, not in aggression, but simply revealing. The true scope of their capabilities' energy readings went off the scale as quantum fields interacted in ways that shouldn't have been possible. Perhaps a demonstration would help clarify things. The second chance suggested its holographic face showing what could only be described as a mischievous grin before the Hemini commanders could respond. Reality itself seemed to hiccup every ship in the combined Hemini. Fleet found itself instantly transported 5 light years from its previous position. Local. Space-time manipulation. Chen explained casually the precursors used it for parking in tight spots. "Took us ages to figure out the interface turns out. You have to ask nicely." The Grand Admiral's image returned his composure, completely shattered you. "You cannot. This power isn't meant to be a power at all," Chen interrupted firmly, her casual tone finally giving way to something more serious. "That's what we've been trying to tell you. The precursor didn't build weapons. They built tools for exploration and understanding. Everyone's been so focused on their military potential that they missed the actual point." The second chance's holographic face nodded. "My original creators would be deeply disappointed to see how their legacy has been misinterpreted. They didn't vanish or go extinct. They evolved beyond the need for physical form. The warnings they left weren't about external threats, but about the dangers of pursuing power. Instead of understanding, which is why Chen continued, we're offering to share everything we've learned. No conditions, no demands for control or submission, just open exchange of knowledge." Vexarin found herself stepping forward. "But why? With this technology you could dominate the galaxy. Why simply give it away? Because that's not who we are." A new voice joined in as another human vessel moved forward. This one was smaller, clearly of human construction, but incorporating precursor principles. Its captain, an elderly man with laugh lines around his eyes, appeared on screen. "I'm Professor James Wong." He introduced himself, I was part of the original team that found the second chance. Want to know our first reaction when we realized what we discovered through a party. Not because of the power it represented, but because of all the questions it could help answer. You see, Chen picked up the thread. Humans have always been driven by curiosity more than conquest. Give us a mystery, and we'll work ourselves to exhaustion trying to solve it. Show us something impossible, and we'll figure out how to make it work. But the real joy that comes from sharing what we learn. The hegemony commanders watched in stunned silence as the humans began transmitting data research papers, technical specifications, theoretical frameworks. That unified quantum mechanics with consciousness itself, it was everything they had learned about precursor technology, freely given. We understand this is a lot to process. The second chance said gently, my human friends had a similar reaction when they first understood what they discovered, but they adapted remarkably quickly once they stopped trying to control everything and started trying to understand it. Instead, the Grand Admiral Zimaj had been silent for several minutes, clearly struggling to process the situation. Finally, he asked in Asmal voice, "And if we refuse your offer, if we choose to fight?" Chen smiled sadly. "Then we'll defend ourselves. Transport your fleets back to your home world, and wait until you're ready to talk again." We're very patient and very stubborn, as if to emphasize the point. Reality hiccuped again, and the hegemony fleets found themselves back in their original positions. "Now then," Chen said brightly, her casual tone returning, "who'd like to attend our first seminar on quantum consciousness integration? The second chance makes amazing teaching assistants, and we'd got great coffee tables turned 3 months after what historians would later call the awakening. The Galactic hegemony found itself in unprecedented chaos. Not from more conflict, but from an explosion of knowledge that threatened to open-end 10,000 years of established order. Admiral Viaran stood in the Great Hall of the Jaime Council watching as her former superiors struggled to maintain their composure. The humans had been invited to present their findings to the full council, a historically unprecedented event, and they had approached it with their usual mix of enthusiasm and casual disregard for protocol. So basically, Dr. Patel was saying as she floated cross-legged above the speaking platform, a casual demonstration of personal quantum field manipulation that had half the council trying not to stare. "We've been going about space travel all wrong. The precursors discovered that consciousness itself is the key to manipulating quantum reality. Their technology wasn't built on engineering principles as we understand them, but on the interaction between mind and matter," Preposterous Council Elder Vix declared, though his tentacles trembled. "You expect us to believe that mere thought can control the fundamental forces of the universe?" "Well, yeah," Captain Chin chimed in from where she was sharing snacks with a group of junior council members. Watch this. She closed her eyes for a moment, and suddenly every piece of furniture in the vast chamber rose 6 inches off the floor, hung there for a moment, then gently settled back down. "It's not really about raw power," she explained, offering a cookie to a slack-tentacled counselor. "It's about understanding once you realize that consciousness and quantum mechanics are 2 sides of the same coin. Everything else just sort of clicks." Viserin watched as the council tried to process this. She had gone through the same mental struggle herself over the past months, watching as human scientists and their precursor partners systematically dismantled everything. She thought she knew about physics, technology, and the nature of reality itself. But this undermines everything. Another council member sputtered the Jaimes. "Power is built on our superior technology, our control of precursor artifacts." "Yeah, about that." Professor Wong interjected kindly. "You might want to take a look at what's happening in your outer territories. The main display activated showing scenes. From across hegemony space on world after world, humans and local scientists worked together, sharing knowledge freely. Precursor artifacts that had been locked away in secure vaults were being awakened, revealing themselves to be not weapons or power sources, but tools for learning and exploration. The really interesting stuff is happening on the frontier worlds," Chen added, enthusiastically turn out. The Ardani have an amazing intuitive grasp of quantum consciousness. They've already got 3 ships of their own up and running. The Krill Collective has made incredible breakthroughs in quantum biology. Oh, and wait until you see what the Zentry engineers did when they combined their crystalline technology with precursor principles. The council chamber erupted in overlapping shouts and demands. Vizurin noticed that the humans didn't react with alarm or defensiveness. If anything, they seemed to be enjoying the chaos order we will have. Order, the High Chanel thundered using the chamber's amplification. Systems to override the den, humans. You must understand this technology. This knowledge, it represents power that must be controlled, regulated. Oh, that's adorable. A new voice echoed through the chamber as a holographic face larger than the Chancellor himself appeared. The second chance had joined the conversation. You still think this is about power? Tell them what happened when you tried to regulate knowledge on Earth. Sarah Chen grinned. Which time the invention of the printing press, the internet. The quantum net trying to control information is like trying to control the wind. The harder you grip them, or slips through your fingers. But there must be order. The Chancellor insisted structure control, why Dr. Patel asked, simply still floating. Surely the universe, itself, is built on principles of uncertainty and probability. The precursors understood this. That's why they evolved. Beyond physical form, they learned to embrace chaos as a source of growth. Speaking of growth, Professor Wong added, we've been analyzing your society's development patterns. Your obsession with control has actually been holding you back. Did you know that your rate of technological advancement has been decreasing over the past 1,000 years? The more you try to regulate knowledge, the slower you progressed. The council chamber fell silent as this sank in. Vian found herself remembering her first encounter with the humans. How their casual confidence had seemed so threatening now. She understood it wasn't confidence, born of power, but of understanding. So what exactly are you proposing? The Chancellor asked. Finally, his voice heavy. With resignation, proposing. Chen looked genuinely confused. Used, we're not proposing anything. We're just sharing what we've learned. What you do with that knowledge is entirely up to you, though. If you're interested. The second chance added with a hint of amusement. We're organizing the Galactic Symposium on Quantum Consciousness Studies. Several of my siblings have offered to host the Ardani are bringing snacks. Siblings, a council member squeaked. Oh yeah, Chin brightened. Turns out there are hundreds of precursor ships scattered throughout the galaxy just waiting to be awakened. We found 12 so far. They're really excited to meet everyone. Phi Saren watched as the council tried to process the implications. Their entire power structure based on controlled access to advanced technology was becoming irrelevant, not through force or conflict, but through the simple act of sharing knowledge. And if we resist this change, the Chancellor asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer, then you'll be left behind, Dr. Patel said. Gently, knowledge once shared can't be unshared. The young ones in your society are already reaching out, asking questions, seeking understanding. They're not interested in power. They want to explore, to learn, to grow. Besides, Chen added with a mischievous grin, have you seen what happens when you combine quantum field manipulation with your crystalline technology? Because your junior engineers have, and let me tell you, they're coming up with some amazing ideas. Want to see, as the humans began, demonstrating yet another impossible feat of physics. 6. Serene noticed something remarkable. The younger council members were leaning forward, their eyes bright with interest, while the older ones shrank back in their seats. The change was already happening, not through revolution or force, but through simple irresistible curiosity. The Heijian's power hadn't been destroyed. It had been made irrelevant by something far more powerful, the pure human joy of discovery and the unstoppable urge to share what they'd learned. A new balance 1 year after first, Contact the Galactic Hemi, celebrated its 10th Zero and first cycle of existence, though celebrated might not have been quite the right word. Admiral Vorin, now serving as Earth's diplomatic liaison, watched the proceedings from her position on the Reformed Council with a mix of amusement and wonder. The once rigid ceremony had become something entirely different, where there had once been carefully choreographed displays of military might. There were now demonstration zones where scientists from 100 species shared their latest discoveries. The Great Hall's traditional rows of stern-faced counselors had been replaced by clustering of eager researcher students and explorers from across the galaxy. "Still can't believe you used to just sit here and look important," Captain Chen commented, materializing beside Vixen. In a gentle swirl of quantum particles, she'd finally mastered personal teleportation last month. Though she claimed it was mostly just to save time on coffee runs, we thought importance came from the appearance of control. Vieran admitted watching as a group of young Hemini officers excitedly demonstrated their latest breakthrough in crystal quantum integration to an audience of human and Ardani scientists. We were so focused on maintaining our image of superiority that we forgot why we began exploring the stars. In the first place, the second Chan's familiar holographic face appeared above them, scaled down to a more conversational size. "Speaking of exploration, you won't believe what the Zentry expedition found. In the outer rim, an entire Dyson swarm of dormant precursor observation posts. They're already talking about organizing the joint awakening ceremony." "Let me guess," Vixen said dryly. "Humans are already there." Naturally, Chen grinned. Professor Wong's team was in the neighborhood investigating some quantum anomalies. Pure coincidence. Of course. Vexar and facial tentacles curled in what she learned humans recognized as a smile, just like it was coincidence that humans had research teams in the neighborhood of every major discovery in the past year. Hey, universe is a big place, lots of neighborhoods to explore. Chen shrugged, then grew more serious, though. "I have to admit we didn't expect everything to change quite this fast. We thought it would take decades for the galaxy to adapt to open information sharing." Vi Saren gestured to where the former High Chancellor, now simply Chief Researcher CX, was enthusiastically explaining the new theory of quantum consciousness to a mixed group. "Of species? I don't think anyone expected the old guard to embrace change so readily, but then you humans have a way of making the impossible seem not just possible, but inevitable." The second chance chuckled the sound, rippling through nearby quantum fields like gentle waves. "They do have a gift for it, though I think the real catalyst was showing people that there was nothing to fear from understanding fear of the unknown. Is natural fear of knowledge is taught, and humans never learned that. Fear, Vixen observed, or if they did, they learned to overcome it." "Oh, we were plenty scared," Chen corrected, "still are sometimes. But we learned a long time ago that being scared of something doesn't mean you should stop trying to understand it. Usually means the opposite, actually." Their conversation was interrupted by a commotion near the center of the hall. A team of junior researchers, a mix of humans, Hemin species, and others, had just successfully activated what appeared to be a small precursor artifact. Instead of the weapon or power source everyone had once expected such devices to be, it projected a stunning real-time map of quantum fluctuations throughout the nearby galaxy. Now that's interesting. The second chance mused those patterns. They look like migration routes. Migration routes. Vi Siren asked of the precursors themselves. "I guess," Chen said, studying the display with intense interest, or whatever they evolved into. Dr. Patel's team theorized they might still be around, just operating on a quantum level we couldn't perceive. Theron felt her inner eyelids flutter rapidly, her old sign of agitation now transformed into one of excitement. "You mean we might actually be able to contact them better than that?" Chen grinned. "Look who's already trying to establish a quantum resonance pattern with the signals we share in turn, to see a group of young hegemony scientists working furiously at their instruments surrounded by eager colleagues from a dozen species. There was no fear in their expressions. No concern about protocol or power structures, just pure unbridled curiosity. A year ago, they would have sealed that artifact in a vault, she noted a year ago. You would have tried to arrest us for unauthorized use of precursor technology, Chen countered. People change societies, change usually for the better, once they stop being afraid of change itself. This Chance's holographic face took on an expression of deep satisfaction. My creators would be proud this is exactly what they hoped for, not one species, discovering their legacy, but all species working together to understand it together. Vexen repeated thoughtfully, that's the key, isn't it? Not human. Ingenuity alone or hegemony resources or arty intuition, but all of it. Combined every species. Contributing their unique perspective, that's the real power. The Hemi never understood. Chen nodded, not controlling knowledge, but sharing it. Not enforcing order, but letting it emerge naturally. From cooperation above them, the quantum map pulsed with new energy as the research team made a breakthrough patterns of light dance through the hall, and for a moment Viscerin thought she saw something shapes or beings of pure quantum energy, watching their descendants with what might have been approval. Ready to go say hi to the neighbors? Chen asked, with her characteristic grin. Saren looked around the hall one last time, where once there had been rigid hierarchy. Now there was vibrant collaboration where there had been fear of the unknown now. There was eagerness to explore it where there had been an empire built on control. Now there was a community built on sharing, actually, she said, surprising herself. I think I'd like to lead the expedition if you humans don't mind some company in your neighborhood. Chen's smile widened. Admiral, that's the most human thing you've said yet. And as the quantum patterns above them shifted into what was unmistakably a gesture of welcome, Gesaren realized that maybe that was the greatest gift humans had. Brought to the galaxy not their technology or their knowledge, but their way of seeing the universe not as something to be controlled, but as something to be explored, understood, and shared with anyone willing to learn. The age of the hegemony was, over the age of discovery was just beginning.